Okay, in this video we're going to look at getting the timeline experimental preview installed and doing some basic things with it, learning a little bit about it. First of all, you have to go to this forum thread. This forum link is in the description, and this is what it looks like. You can see how powerful it is at Unite 2016. Here's some of the highlights. And you got to get the download from right here, the Timeline Experimental Preview Installer. So that takes me here, and it's Unity 560b6. But apparently it's not just the regular Unity 560b6, it's a special version, so you need to click your download version. I'm on Windows, and then we're gonna have to do the regular install alongside of our other Unity versions. I want WebGL and Android and Visual Studio, so alright, let's hit install. This is gonna take a little while. I like to use my own folders for custom Unity installations. For this one I'll call it Unity 560b6, and I think I'll call it TL for timeline, because from my understanding this is a little bit different than the regular beta 6. Okay, so while that's installing, let's take a look here. We're also going to have to get the Cinemachine timeline integration, and let me explain that because this was really confusing to me. Basically, in the timeline editor, you can put all these different types of tracks in. For example, I can see here that this is a animation track, so it has different animations in it, and then this is an audio track to play sounds. And so anyways, the point is there's all these different types. When you add, and that's this button right here. Oh, that's better. When you add one of these, you get a choice of what type of track you want to add. So you can add an animation, an activation, which just turns game objects on and off, an audio one to play sounds. But to add a Cinemachine track, you have to get the Cinemachine timeline integration package. Alright, so there's a lot of stuff to learn here. First of all, it's a great idea to go through the release notes and this timeline preview manual. These helped me a lot. Well, I guess this one didn't help me so much. There's some good info here on the release notes, but this document helped me a ton. This goes through everything that well, it's all the documentation they have on it. Shows you how to use it, and I highly advise to go through this document to figure out how to use it. So I guess a lot of the stuff in the document I'll end up talking about in the video, but okay, there's an example project with the download the Playables API Unity project. And the next thing to look at is the Cinemachine timeline integration, because if we're going to integrate Cinemachine with timeline, then we should know about Cinemachine. So I'm going to go back here to the timeline and Cinemachine forum, and let's take a look at this frequently asked questions. Here we go. And so, can I use Cinemachine base rig with my project? Yes. And so this is the Cinemachine base rig. It's available and it's free, and pretty soon there's going to be a game rig, but there is the Cinemachine base rig. Alright, so what we're going to do is finish this download, start a new project, import this base rig. We're going to go to the Timeline Experimental Preview Release 1. And we know we're going to get the Cinemachine timeline integration. And so that brings us to here, and there's a README. Let's take a look at that. The README says if you're using timeline, you're going to have to get this, which, okay, that takes us back to the form. All right, and then to have all the functionality, you need to have the Unity Post FX. So that is right here. All right, the Post FX. And if we go down here, it's on GitHub. They've got pre-built packages here. And we got the processing stack 1.01. And that is the 1.01 Unity package. Alright, so I got that Unity package. And then we're just going to wait for Unity to finish downloading. Test timeline editor. All right, well, let's start with it. I need to import the post-processing package I downloaded. So that's the post-processing 1.01 that we just downloaded. I'll just import all of that. And the next part that we need to import is that, let's see, back here at the README to the Cinemachine. Download that. So this is Cinemachine 2017-0313. And actually, that might have been a mistake because I think we first need to get the base rig. So Cinemachine base rig. Let's download that and import it. See, yeah, it already had a bunch of stuff. Now I'm gonna overwrite that with this pack. And that's not what we want to do. I think we want to overwrite the what was in this with the Cinemachine 2017-0313 pack. So yeah, well, now that I import this, I see it's going to overwrite a bunch of the stuff that was in the base rig. And our errors should be gone. Oh no, it has an error about the custom blend scene. So I'm just going to delete that scene. We have the rest of the ones to look at. Okay, and after that we do have the timeline editor. We've got Cinemachine. So if we go to Cinemachine, we can see that, but we also have window and we got timeline editor. So I'm going to dock the timeline editor down here, and let's just create a plane, and we'll make it huge, I guess. And we might as well just make a couple materials really quickly. And I saved the scene. Okay. We're ready to do something. Let's go to the timeline editor, and I'm going to make a new game object, and I'm going to call it timeline. Or maybe it's timeline A or something like that, but really we want to create a timeline. So I selected timeline, and I'm in the timeline editor. I'm going to say create. And it needs to make a timeline file, so I'll just call that timeline A. And of course that makes a timeline. Now this is tied to your game object inspector, so if I change the plane, it's going to change it. But we're only going to be working with one timeline, so I'm going to lock this timeline into place. And let's go ahead and add a cube, and let's add a sphere. might as well put a color on those. Okay, so we got a cube and a sphere. And if I press play right now, we just look at those. Alright, let's add a Cinemachine timeline track. And that's going to move the camera. So actually, let's hold off on that because that one's a little bit more complicated. First of all, let's just start off with the basics. Let's add an activation track. An activation track turns game objects on and off. So if I wanted the sphere, for example, to turn on and off, I could drag that into here and it'll be turned on while you have an active part, and it will turn off when you don't have an active part. So if I duplicate this, then we could, now if I press play, you're going to see that the game object is going to turn off and now turn back on. That is all activation track does, is turn game objects on and off. Alright, so the next type of track that we got is an animation track. And animation takes care of animating objects, and that could be root motion for Mechanim characters, or it could be just moving an object around the scene. Alright, so let's move the box around the scene. So in order to have a animation track, you have to add a Animator. So I'm going to say Animator. It doesn't need a controller. It can have a controller, but it doesn't need it. I'm going to put the cube into here. Now, because I don't have any animations for the cube, I can't play it. And all I can do is record an animation. So first of all, let's look at recording an animation. I want to animate the cube. So I make sure I have the cube selected in the hierarchy, so I can modify the transform, and I press record. Now I can scrub through here, nothing's going to happen unless I keyframe. And to create a keyframe, you just need to modify the value. So if I want this to be right where it's at 0.78, I could put it at 1. That's going to make a keyframe. Now I'm going to say 0.78. Okay, now it's keyframed to where I wanted it at. And now let's go down here and say we want it, by the time it got over here, we want to move it, over there. Okay, so now it has a keyframe there, so I'm going to hit stop recording. And we can see that, you know what, let's turn off that ball right here so that the cube can pass through it. So the cube's going to come, it turns off the sphere, and then by the time it's passed by, it turns the sphere back on. Alright, so let's hit play. And we're going to see just what we made. Alright, so that's how to record animations and the animation track. The next thing I want to do is add another animation track, but I want to animate a character. So I'm going to import a character. So let's go ahead and import that into the project. This should have some animations for us and a Unity guy. So over to the project view, let's find the locomotion setup, and there should be a animations, and we got this guy. Alright, so we're going to put him into the scene. Now, let's go ahead and go back into the timeline editor. We have this animation track. We have the default avatar. He has an animator. And if I drag him into here, alright, I hit play. Looks like he's just going to stand in T-pose. So he must not have an animation controller. There is a locomotion animation controller, but again, he doesn't have to have one. So to show that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click in the animation track, and I'm going to say add from animation clip, and I'm going to search for the idle. There we go, and let's hit play. And there he is. He's back to idle. Now you're going to see he went right to 0, 0, 0. Now there's two ways to fix that. First of all, let's say we want to have him at we want to have him over here, and we want him to be 180 degrees. So he's at Z2 and 180 and a degrees of 180. When I hit play, he's going to go to 0, 0, 0, because that's where the idle animation happens at, and almost all animations should be happening at 0, 0, 0 in the animation file. So to fix that, you can click on this, and we can give him a track offset of to 180. And now when I press play, he's going to start in that position because it's applying a whole offset. I think the better way to do it is to, let me just turn that off completely back to where it was. So I think the better way to do it is to go to the timeline editor, and we're going to make an empty game object, and this is going to be called the whatever his name is, Unity Man, and we'll call that root. And we're going to make the animated object child of that. And first I should have, let me press Control Z because I want to put this at 0, 0, 0, and this guy's already at 0, 0, 0, so we'll put it there. Alright, now I can animate this transform, so I'm going to add another animation track actually, and this is going to be the Unity Man's root, and we're going to have to create an animator, it says. Okay, so it should put that animator. So this has an animator, and that's going to move the root transform, and this has an animator, and that's going to animate the actual guy's movements. Alright, now what I can do is I could say I'm going to come here to the Unity Man root, I'm going to select that, and I'm going to say record, and on frame 1 I want him to be at 2 with 180, and I'm going to turn the record mode off, and now when I press play, he's where I want him to be in the world, and this animation is still playing at essentially 0, 0, 0. Now this might or might not be the best way to set it up. I've been asking in the Unity forums, and that's what they advised. However, when you mix this with root motion, the character could get to some really weird places, because root motion is going to move this, and then if you move this on top of that, you could get the character in some weird places where the root motion has moved this guy to some weird position, and then you're animating this position as well, and you get some weird mix. So just be careful, but this is the only way I've been able to get it to work, and it's also what Unity did advise in the forums. Alright, so that now we have the character on frame 0 where we want him to be at in the world, and then let's go ahead and add I'm going to make that animation smaller, and I'm going to add from the animation clip a walk. So I'll just do the regular walk. And we can see that this animation has root motion. Because the character is actually moving, he's not staying at 0, 0, 0. Now if he does stay at 0, 0, 0 and we use an in-place animation, that's fine. We would just have to come down here to the root and move that while he walks. and that's fine too. So either way, and that might be better because to use in-place animations, because then this guy always stays at 0, 0, 0. You could see as he's walking, it's moving that actual transform. But anyways, that does work, and we can press play, and he's going to start where we want him, plus he's going to start walking. And if we stretch that out, he would walk even further. Now you can blend animations. Let's try that real quick. So let's add one more animation from a clip, and we'll do a plant north, turn right 180. Alright, so that's, he's going to walk forward. Now it shows him going back to 0, 0, 0, or where he was at, but it shouldn't do that in play mode. In play mode it should actually play that animation from his, wherever he was at. So if you want, if these two animations weren't blending together well, you could go like this and just drag it into each other. Now it's going to blend that animation together. So the next part is going to be, of course, the audio track. We could look at that. And then we got the control track, a playable track, and the Cinemachine timeline track. Let's, for this video, so it doesn't get too long, let's just add a Cinemachine track. And I'm going to right click over here and say add Cinemachine shot clip. Now on this, first of all, there's no Cinemachine brain as what I believe this is. So let's go to the main camera and add a Cinemachine brain. And then back to the timeline editor, we should be able to drag the main camera into there. Alright, and we've already created that, but let me just do it again. Add Cinemachine shot clip. Select that. It has this Cinemachine shot virtual camera none. And we could say create right here. We also should be able to say Cinemachine create virtual camera, and or we could just say this, and that's going to populate it here. Alright, now we got our virtual camera. Here it is at 0, 0, 0. I want to move it over here. Now the icon doesn't follow yet, so that's alright. And the rotation shouldn't be too important because Cinemachine is going to take care of the rotation for us. But I want the camera to move. First of all, let's put the first one where our camera's at, where we want it to start at. So I want the camera to start right here, and then I'm going to make this a shorter clip, and I'm going to make a new Cinemachine shot, and I'm going to create a second camera. Alright, now we can say, let's move this camera over here, and now let's hit play. The first camera is the virtual camera, and then we snapped into place under the second one. Now this is where it really helps to do that blend, because if I grab this edge and I blend it into this one and hit play, alright, we're just facing whatever direction the camera is. But let's set it to look at the Unity man. And I could look at right at him, but let's look at his hips, spine. Let's look at his head. So there's his head. So for virtual camera 1, I want the look at to be head. And for virtual camera 2, let's look at the player's head again. Now let's hit play. So we're looking at the player, And that's what we got. Let's real quick add an audio track, and the audio track wants an audio mixer. So we need to go into the right now. If we tried to find one, there is none. So I'm going to go to project, and we'll add an audio mixer. So we'll say create audio mixer, and we'll call it mix 01. Alright, now the mix 01, we need to get a sound effect in here. So I just have a couple clips down here. Nothing major. Menu load probably is the loudest, so if we go back to the timeline editor, we could say add from audio clip, and we could just say menu load. Let's try this again. It's probably looping it. Yeah, it says loop right here, so I'm going to turn loop off. But that's playing at full, I guess it's not playing in relative to where the camera is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an empty game object in the world, and then I'm going to add a audio source, and then let's put that menu load, and I'm going to make it a 3D sound, and it's probably a really big radius. Let's take a look in the game. The output is, we could set that to this mix 01, and it's going to say play on a wake, and we'll loop this one so that it just loops in the world. And under the 3D sound settings, I see the max distance is 500. Let's make that really small, like 10. Alright, so there we go. Now it should be really quiet when it starts, and then it should get louder if the camera goes close. Alright, so that sound was, it's actually not even down here. We need to set an audio source down here. I guess we didn't do that, so there we go. And again, we could add straight into here from an audio clip as well. And what else do we got? The control track. I don't know what this is for. We can add a control playable asset clip. Source game object, prefab, control activation. I don't know. I'm going to have to find out. I don't know what that is. And then we have playable track. And this is something custom, like you could put your own scripts. So this actually gets really powerful because I don't know how, but I hope to find out. So these two I'm not sure, but at least we have a simple little animation here that we've set up with the timeline editor. Alright guys, thanks for watching. If it helps you out, give it a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video or tutorial.